few things that I've already done. This is greenware. It hasn't been fired. It was a slab piece that I put in a mold. This is the mold I used for plates, and this hasn't been fired yet, and it's really fragile and it'll break easy. This has been fired one time. It's bisqued, and it's already got the glaze on it, and it's pretty sturdy, except that, you know, you do that too often and the glaze will fall off. And this one is one that's already been glazed and fired. This is some greenware that hasn't been trimmed yet. It's only been thrown. And to trim it, what you would do is you would take it off the bat, flip it over upside down, and trim the base. And over here, I've got a couple of wheels set up for demos. If you want to come on over here, and I'll show you these. And I'm actually going to throw a pot today for you. But before I do, I'll show you how it's set up here for trimming. This is a piece that I threw before, and I put it on the wheel, and it's set up for trimming. And the way you would do that is you would just turn on the wheel and trim the foot however you wanted it to look. Normally I would do trimming first, because the building the pot makes a bit of a mess, and I prefer to not be messy when I trim a pot. But today I'm just gonna throw this pot, and then I'll trim this later if I still have time, or I'll just trim it on my own later. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you about centering first, and then I'm going to pull it. So what the first thing you want to do with your clay is wedge it. And this has already been wedged, and the purpose in wedging is, one, to help eliminate air bubbles, which, although they won't hurt the pot, they make it hard to throw. Also, if the pot has any moisture in it when it's thrown, the first time it can blow up in the kiln if there's air bubbles in it that have moisture in them. So the first thing what I've done now is I've centered the pot, or centered the clay, and now I'm going to start throwing. I'll bring it up. Another reason for wedging the clay is because clay has a tendency to dry out, even inside the plastic bag. And the outside of the clay in the bag will be drier than the center of the clay. When you slice the clay, you'll see that in the different colors in the color of the clay itself. And so wedging it distributes the moisture more evenly and allows it to be thrown. So now what I'm doing is I'm opening the pot, and I open it a little ways, and I want to check for the depth of the base of the pot to make sure I have room for carving a foot. And the depth is about that right now, so that's a good depth, or a good thickness rather, for trimming the foot later. So now I'm going to pull it open a little bit. And something that's very important to do is to compress the base of the pot. And this helps get out some of the moisture that's in the clay, and helps prevent it from cracking on the bottom. A lot of times pots will crack on the bottom, and the reason for a pot cracking on the bottom is, one reason anyway, is the walls of the pot will tend to dry out faster than the base of the pot, because the base of the pot only has one way for the moisture to go, whereas the walls, you know, obviously have both ways. So once the wall of the pot is dry, then it can't move anymore. But if the base of the pot is still wet, then it's got to have some place to go because it'll shrink. So instead of shrinking in because it can't do that anymore, it'll start to shrink from the center and create a hole. So you want to keep your stuff covered with plastic, like I was doing there and over there, until you get to the point where it's almost dry and you can take the plastic off and you don't have to worry about it cracking anymore. A lot of potters do things differently. I like to use a sponge on the outside to pull the pot up. It helps keep it moist. One thing you want to make sure you do is every once in a while get the water out of the bottom of the pot, because water in the bottom of the pot, it'll soak into the bottom of the pot and just make it harder to dry later. You'll end up with more cracks. And you just slowly pull up, and the wider it gets, the slower you want the wheel to go, because when it gets to a certain point, if the wheel's going really fast, it'll just fly apart. You don't have to pull all the way to the top. In fact, you want to leave a little bit at the top for your rim, because it just looks ugly, when it's all nice and straight. I mean, it looks nice until it's all done, and then you get this really thin rim, and it just looks amateurish. So you want to leave the lid a little thick, or the top a little thick, the rim, and this helps give it some strength too. You don't have to pull all the way up. You can pull up to a certain point, stop, go back down, grab some more, and pull up again. And if it gets a little out of whack like it is now, it's not a big deal. You can always straighten it up. And I'm not paying attention to time, so how am I doing?
You're at 6:30.
Doing good? How much time have I got left?
Another minute and a half.
Okay, so you've seen me center this, and you've seen me pull it up to a certain, that size anyway. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you trimming, since I've still got a little time left. So trimming, what you want to do, you want to start with evenness, because if you have an uneven piece when you start trimming, if you don't even it out first, then the uneven parts are just going to get worse. So the way I do it, what I like to do, now I've already centered this, and it's centered down here. So just because this is a little bit uneven, it's not a big deal, because I'm going to trim it off and make it even first. So the first thing I'm doing here is trimming this piece off so that now it's more even. And now I'm going to go in here and take some trimming tools and smooth it down. And it's just like working with a lathe. Have any of you used lathes before? Yeah, so it's pretty much the same thing, and it's really a lot of fun, actually, I think. You can go as slow or as fast as you want, as long as your piece is held down onto the wheel head. And the way I've done that is I've used pieces of wet clay to just hold it in place. And I don't push into the pot, I push down onto the wheel. That way it doesn't distort the pot. I throw mostly with porcelain. I like porcelain. but it's a little hard to use sometimes because it's less plastic and just doesn't work as well. The clay they use here normally is a clay called Kodiak, and it's a really good clay. It's good for throwing and good for building, but it doesn't have any grog in it. If you want to throw really big pieces, then you got to find clays with grog in it. The grog is what holds the clay together when it starts getting big. There's nothing in here in the clays that I use to really hold it together when it gets big. It'll just kind of flop around until it dries. I've put pieces on the wheel and tried to pull them out large, and I get them all nice and large and they look beautiful, and then the rim will just kind of fold down and collapse. So there's a point where you know that it's starting to get dangerous, but you push on anyway because you want to do something, and it doesn't always work out. So what I'm doing here is just bringing it down, and once I get rid of this excess clay on the bottom, I will smooth it out and make it blend in with the rest. You can see now I had that big base on it, big thick base on it, and now it blends in with the rest of the pot and looks all smooth. And I could leave it like this now, but I'd want to at least smooth that out a little bit, but I'm not going to leave it like that. Instead, I'm going to put what's called a foot on it. So I'm going to carve into the center and carve into the edge like this, and I'm going to end up with a foot about 1/4 inch wide that runs around the bottom of the pot. And you can see the beginnings of it right here. And that's what it'll look like. I'll make it a little thinner, but it'll be a foot like that. So, are there any questions? Anything you want to know about? Go ahead.
Where's most of the clay produced from?
All over the world. I've got some clay that's some fairly expensive clay that's produced in Australia, and it's really super white clay. It's really a nice clay, and it just feels beautiful in your hands. But you can get it anywhere. You can dig it out of your backyard.
How long has it taken you to learn all this?
I've been doing it for at least 6 years off and on. I started in California, and then I went into the Air Force, and while I was in the Air Force I was stationed at Minot for a while, and I did it there for a little while, and then I've done it here.
What got you interested?
Pardon me?
What got you interested in being a potter?
Oh, that was, geez, like 1972. I don't remember. Anything else? Anybody? Go ahead.
So you can actually go online and order clay from around the world?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Anywhere. Well, I use Seattle Pottery Supply, and it's expensive to ship, but you know, what can you do? And it's for about a 25-pound bag of clay, it'll cost you $11 to $15 plus shipping, and shipping almost doubles the cost because of how heavy it is.
How much would you get out of a 25-pound brick of clay? Like how much?
I could make five pots. This is I could probably make 6 or 7 that size. I usually divide it up into 5 or 6 pieces.
Do you just make them for personal use, or do you ever sell them?
I sold stuff. As a matter of fact, there's a pottery sale in December here in this room, and it'll be announced. And it's a student pottery sale, but the instructor also has pieces. And some of the stuff is quite good. Last year I made $155. And that's just, you know, at a pottery sale. Most of my stuff I give away or keep myself, you know.
Do you normally make your stuff to be decorative or to actually use it, like to eat with or whatever?
Oh, both. Yes, I eat with it, and I use it for planters, you know, and all sorts of things. I like working with colored clays more than glazes. I like using transparent glazes and colored clays. As a matter of fact, that plate over there that I did has 3 colors of clay in it, and you really can't see them. But what I did is I took a cobalt, which is a colorant, cobalt oxide, and I mixed it with 1 clay, and then I kept the other one white. And then when I stuck it together, I used a slip that had copper in it, so it should have 3 colors in it. And then what I did is I made it out on a slab, and I cut it up and rearranged the pieces and everything. And so you really can't see it, but there's all kinds of different lines and colors in here that'll become apparent after the first firing, and then really show through after the glaze firing. And I'll use a transparent glaze on it.
What about something like the blue on this?
The blue is an underglaze that I use, and an underglaze is composed mostly of clay body and colorant. Anything else?
Rehydrate the clay once it's dried out, or
Water.
can you?
Oh,
Or
yeah.
just mix it with water.
Yeah, the best way to do is to powder it, you know, and then mix it fast. But you can just, like there's a couple buckets over there with dry clay, and you can just put water in it and leave it for a little while, soak up, and then wedge it, you know,
Naturally.
mix it up.
Okay.
Anything else? Nope. Nope.
Thank you.